Laila, first of all, I want to congratulate you on an amazing year. And I mean this from the bottom of my heart. I think you're one of, by far, the most dynamic politicians out there. Definitely a blessing to our region.
You've done an amazing job. First question, what was the year like and what's it like being in Ottawa?
Well, you know what? It's really nice to be back home in Fort McMurray and get to spend some time, more time with my kids.
I don't think I've ever seen a weirder, stranger year. With the Conservatives, I understand their stance on our energy. I know that the goal is this. With the Liberals, it's just been bizarre. Like, yes, we want this pipeline, but our environmental minister, harassed Ralph Klein and tried to put a solar panel on his house. I've been fairly open-minded. I think Jean Chrétien was a great prime minister. Same with Brian Mulroney. Paul Martin, to a certain extent, I respected his business acumen. With Trudeau, and I met Trudeau, to your point, I hosted Trudeau here for 2 events when he was a Liberal, right? This was in the early days. I find myself I'm at odds with him.
I think most Canadians are with you. And it's interesting, I've talked to people right across our riding, right across Canada. They've had enough. They want Canada back to the Canadian promise that they grew up with. You work hard, you can buy a house, you can get a job, you can have a family, you can have a good life. And that Canadian promise is so broken right now because after 9 years of Justin Trudeau, all we see is hurt. All we see is further attacks on our energy industry, them talking out of both sides of their mouth, and investors are choosing to take their money and go elsewhere because they don't trust that Canada is a good place to invest, especially in the energy industry.
Why won't he call an early election?
The real question is, how does Jagmeet Singh, the leader of the NDP, have more confidence in the Prime Minister than most of his caucus and cabinet have in him?
I find that I agree with you. And I think with Jagmeet, it's like he talks about affordability. And I know that he had a BMW with dual exhaust and he has a Rolex. And Two Rolexes. Yeah. So he has all these things and he talks about affordability and he has an option to get rid of this disaster, because I don't care what side of politics you're on right now. We need a regroup. We need a strong leader. We need someone who's going to be able to negotiate with Trump.
This is part of the struggle that we're in right now. Is we are 3 years into a mandate of opposition. No party had a full mandate from Canadians to bring things forward. And what we've ended up seeing is this uncomfortable coalition between the NDP and the Liberals form that's driving up the cost of government spending. And all the while, Canadians are struggling. And then they come up with gimmicks like this 2-month tiny tax trick that is optional and is so poorly run and so poorly laid out. Most businesses are struggling to understand what it actually even means. So it's not like, oh, this one has GST, this one doesn't. Now you're making people remember lists of hundreds of items of like, does this count? Does this not count? It's insane. But that is indicative of how this government does things. It's all whatever works in the moment to give them an extra month of power.
Is he worried he won't get elected again? Because as a party leader?
I think that might play into it.
Yeah.
But honestly, I think it's that they enjoy the power and they think that they're solving the problems for Canadians, but I don't think they're actually talking to real Canadians because they're not talking to the people at the grocery store that are struggling and are putting groceries back. And I see that every day.
I'm fascinated by Jagmeet because it's just sort of like, I've never seen a bigger hypocrite in my life.
I would venture that when he goes back to his riding on the weekends, I don't think he's the one that's buying the family groceries. And
I also find they recycle their stuff. I mean, I saw a video that was put out, I think when he was around 2015 when he was elected, and it was talking about how they're going to take all these government buildings and turn them into housing. And now they're about to do that again. It's never actually implemented.
Well, they like to talk about how much money is spent rather than how much has been achieved. I think that's part of the issue. To me, I would never brag about how much it was spent. It's how much were you able to deliver for what was spent.
And it doesn't seem like they deliver a lot.
No, and they're far more concerned about the photo ops and the giant checks and the gimmicks.
Have they done anything effectively? I'd like to say the Trans Mountain Pipeline, but that's not effective, right? Because it was so overpriced, so fought. Is there a win, like objectively, like that they have achieved?
This is part of the challenge, and I'm not even trying to be like hyper partisan here. I can't think of something that they have promised and delivered on properly. They make a lot of promises, they spend a lot of our money, a lot. And yet, when push comes to shove, almost every single rollout of every single program has been met with chaos. We see public safety at the worst rates that they've ever been.
The other thing that I'm fascinated by too, it's like this sort of notion when it comes to so many of their solutions, like banning gas-powered or, fossil fuel-powered vehicles, none of their stuff makes sense, and they're trying to force feed it down our throats, and they're weakening our country in the process. Another thing I'm fascinated by here is Justin Trudeau's response to President Trump trolling him and basically using the feminist argument again, and basically saying that the people that voted for Kamala Harris, and like calling out the entire American population, but somehow the people that voted for her are more morally correct than the ones that voted for Trump.
Part of this really dangerous space that they get in. We are very concerned. So right now, there's a lot of conversation in Canada about foreign interference in our elections.
Yeah.
We might have certain opinions as to what's happening in other countries. We don't have an option to vote in those elections. And I don't think that it is productive to be having conversations about whether you think people made the right choice or not, or any of the rest of it. Your job is to actually serve Canadians so that we can do what's best for our country and put Canada first. And we're not seeing that from Justin Trudeau at so many different levels and layers.
You call yourself a feminist, then you turf your female finance minister the day before she's supposed to do the economic update. And let's just be honest, they're under fire because of his lunacy as a leader.
Her words, his former finance minister, her words, she wasn't going to go along with his cost savings. And I think that is indicative of some of the problems. So she finally said, enough's enough. I've been pushed further than I want to be pushed.
Yeah.
I said that my fiscal guardrail was 40 million or 40 billion, but he pushed her up to 62 billion.
For what purpose?
Well, to continue funding all of these back of napkin policies that don't actually make things more affordable for Canadians. Conservatives, we've had a pretty simple solution. Axe the carbon tax.
Yeah.
On everything for everyone, for always. It's pretty simple. It would have a huge impact. I've had people send me their bills, and they're paying more in carbon tax right now than they are on energy consumption because the carbon tax is applied to transmission and distribution. And this is part of the challenge with Justin Trudeau, is he is a fake feminist. And we've been calling him out on this for a long time. This is part of the struggle that we're in right now, is that anytime a strong woman, Jody Wilson-Raybould, Chrystia Freeland, Jane Philpott before, anytime a woman stands up to him, they get turfed.
The former justice minister, she's like, whoa, you're pushing here, and bye. I cannot think of a time in our history where we've had such a weird relationship with our counterparts in the States. And John Chrétien would have been fine. Paul Martin would have been fine. Mulroney would have been fine. Stephen Harper would have been perfect right now because he's so measured. I think Poilievre will be that guy. I'm really impressed with how Poilievre is handling himself.
So as it currently sits, I'm just going to continue working ridiculously hard, bringing forward positive solutions so that Canadians can make a choice when we get a chance to get to the polls, which will be sometime in 2025, so that Canadians can make a choice. Do they want more of what they're seeing from the NDP Liberals, or do they want a common sense conservative solution? We'll axe the tax, build the homes, fix the budget, and stop the crime.